And we are live. Welcome, everybody. My name is Trent, aka TD, and I'm joined by Brandon from Warsaken, the UX master. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. I don't know if master's quite the word I would use. I think we should all be a little humble to remember that there's always going to be somebody better than us. But I've been doing design for a while. I can talk to it.
Cool, man. Yeah. All right. We got Lee's Comic, who's been, I think, in all of the dev streams. I think Mount Doomy has been as well. UX design is something that it's weird, man. I've if I've ever communicated to somebody that I'm a dev, it would always be like front end, right?
Yeah,
Uh, I've never used Figma or Adobe XD or these
yeah.
applications that we'll talk about, and it's kind of embarrassing. But one of the
That's fine.
reasons why it so is because as a self taught dev, the time that it would have taken to learn how to use those tools, I felt could have been better spent learning how to actually build the website so that at the end of the day, I wasn't building a replica, I was building the actual site.
The real thing. Yeah.
Tell me why, yeah, tell me why that thinking was wrong.
Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily wrong. I think that the process that designers and developers work through, I think there's maybe we could just kind of cover that lightly really quickly. So I think in a lot of cases, you want the people who are responsible for what you're building, like whether it's a PM, the CEO, the owners of whatever small group you're in, yourself, whoever it may be. You want to decide on what it is that you're making, right? So you have to figure that out. And often that will start with some sort of written documentation. Like you'll begin the process by trying to just understand the deliverables, the goals, what are the jobs of this application? Like what's it trying to do? As you figure that out, the next natural stage is to start figuring out through research and design what what different ways could you achieve accomplishing those jobs. So you do a design, and if you just did one design and you ship that out to everybody, that may be terrible, right? So you don't know that until you've gotten it in front of some users and had them take a look at it, and that can be in many ways, I think, the most important critical part of the whole design process. You've got to iterate, you got to design. And so using Figma and XD and these tools allows you to come
Ah,
up with a lot of different designs really, really quickly, figure out what you think that you know about the design, come up with mock-ups that kind of illustrate those in different ways, and then start puzzle piecing them together in a collaborative prototype, and then go put that in front of actual users and get a sense from them how they feel about it. And you can do all of that with Adobe XD or Figma.
right. So I
Um,
just learned that like tonight when I was messing
yeah,
around with it,
yeah,
that like they're basically fully functional prototypes.
yeah.
All the clicking and navigation.
It's all click throughs. Like you can make a
Yeah,
button, and then that button will take you to like another
right.
frame in your design. So you got to design each frame, and like the more intricate you make the prototype, the better. Obviously, the thing is, there's a lot of websites out there that you can use to like organize large scale usability studies, such as usertesting.com. And you can do your own sort of usability studies, right? It's nice to do self-directed ones where you send out a prototype to some people and you have them walk through it and screen record the whole thing, and you have a script, right? You got to remember, like, all of this is about trying to understand, can the software you're designing achieve the jobs that someone is trying to get done? Can they get through it and achieve that job? So, like, an example I might give just to kind of paint the picture here for people would be, let's pretend you want to have a picture on your wall, right? That's the job to be done. You want a picture
Okay.
on your wall, right? But there's so many different ways that could happen. I could paint you a canvas picture and we could hang it with a
Right.
nail. I could get you a LCD projector and put that thing up on
Right.
there. I could paint it directly on the
Yeah, yeah,
wall,
yeah.
or I could, go and take a photo and hang that in a beautiful frame. And there's all kinds of different types of frames and different ways to hang it. What's the best way? Should I use a screw? Should I use a
Right.
nail? And so all of these different concepts are different ways that you can get the job done. And so understanding that you have the job, right? The specific job you're trying to do, and that you understand different ways you can achieve it, That's what the design process is all about. It's about trying to explore those different ways you can achieve doing that job. And so ideation and coming up with different mock-ups and different ways you could approach it is all about trying to do as many of those as possible to try and make sure that when you're looking at, you know, different ways that you can achieve it, you are looking at like what you think are maybe like the top three. Like out of all these different
Okay.
iterations you've done, you've got like two or three that are really solid. Then you go and take that into usability study, and you're looking for what's called directional feedback. Um, you're trying to get a sense from people as they look at your designs. Are there things that they really fail at miserably? So,
Okay.
another metaphorical example would be if you have a crack in your driveway, how many people need to trip over it before you know it needs to be fixed, right?
Right.
The
Right.
first
Right.
one probably enough. The second one, you got a problem. The third one, that's, it's you're going to get a lawsuit. So when you think about usability, you're really trying to evaluate, is it usable, not is it the better usable or the most usable, is it just actually usable,
Okay.
does
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
function? So anyway, that's what I think about when I'm thinking about the design process and usability, within tools like Figma and Adobe XD, is you're designing as many iterations as possible, trying to work through different ways that you can come up with solutions to that job, that you're trying to do.
So let me ask you this. I know that Rockford just kind of posted my question. So he's got a UI and then a slash and an X. What is the difference between UI and
In UX.
UX? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really common for I think a lot of people that are not designers to interchange those,
Mhm.
but they really couldn't be further from each other. So UX is the user experience. That encapsulates the entirety of the product, right? From the moment you got it marketed to you, the installation process or onboarding experience, the overall interaction and how you use it, that's the user experience. And that's what UX stands for. UI is just the user interface. So it's the design of the individual elements, the buttons,
Right.
the placement of those buttons and that kind of stuff. And that's the main difference between the two.
Hi, and welcome, Raiders. You guys came into an interesting stream. It's Brandon from Warsaken, and it's part of our Code and Dev series. So we're definitely going to be nerding out this entire stream. Yeah. Okay. So UX is the front, beginning to end, everything encapsulated, and the UI is like the actual buttons and
Yeah.
such.
And I often, when you're working in like an embedded team with like multiple, people working on something, I think a lot of designers think that they're responsible for the total UX, but I actually think the entire team is responsible for all of the UX. And that is another distinct difference I like to call out. Designers design, the UX is the entirety of the people
Right.
involved in the development side. What did you finally build? What was the
Right. Right.
designs
Right.
that drove that? And how did it all come together?
Yeah, I mean, just for example, like, your backend dev, like, if they're not getting the data to you fast enough through what they're
Yeah.
doing, like, that's gonna make for a
Yeah.
poor user experience on the front
100%.
end, and yeah, a total twins. It's kinda what I said, yeah.
I
Um,
was saying I should put on a hat so that I look just so that I just show up differently in here.
yeah, alright, so let me ask you this, what inspires you in your designs? And, I can kinda give you an example, so and I don't know, maybe you do this also, but, like, I look at what's everybody else is doing that and that's kinda new, like, I'll be as corny as Google, like, 2022 best web designs or something like that, and
Mhm.
just start looking. What do you do?
Yeah, design trends. I think it's nice to look at those. Like it's nice to look at those to get a sense for where the audience is kind of headed, or where
Yeah.
designers are going to drive the audience. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Because I think that's what happens, right? Designers are
Right.
like, "That's cool. I want to try that," and then they put it in all their designs. And if it's done enough,
Right, right,
if
right.
Apple ever does it, then everybody's like,
Right.
"Oh, well, that's the new standard, so we got to follow that
Yeah.
pattern." Um, and designs get kind of tired after a while, and I think certain designs have lend themselves to like more um, less timelessness, if you will. Like I think it's easier for certain design styles to not be have the longevity. So the way I think about the design process is that I actually the skinning of it, the visuals of it come much later, right?
Oh,
Like
wow.
the process starts with why are we building this thing? What is the flow a user should go through? How many clicks do they need to do this task? And then the question is, should they even have to click to do this task? And those are the
Huh.
usability questions that you ask, as opposed to what does it look like? And that distinguishing those two things is a really important factor.
Wow. Yeah. I would never would have thought that. I mean, that's
Like
definitely not the way I was doing it.
challenging yourself to say, should I even make this something that a user has to do? Can I automate this whole process for them? Right. That's a very important factor, I think, and it depends, right? There's what I call a usability arc. Some designers have come up with this in the past, and I just keep leveraging it. I don't even remember who I originally saw that made it, but you can think about like a usability arc. In fact, look, can I share my screen?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep,
Maybe I can
absolutely.
draw this. Let me see if I can draw this. This will kind of blow
Yeah,
people's minds, I
go for it.
think. Let me share my screen. Screen two. Let me know if it's coming through.
Yeah, we
Okay,
got it.
perfect. All
Alright,
right.
so what
So
tool is this first?
this is just a whiteboard. This is Microsoft Whiteboard. So
Okay,
this is just the default whiteboard.
gotcha.
So when you think about usability, right? There's a certain amount of people who are a certain number of features that are going to be included in your app. And
Okay,
so if you think about the features, right, along this line, and sort of like the simplicity factor, perhaps on the other side here. But we'll go through the details. So the if your app doesn't have very many features, right, it ends up sort of being not enough, right? It doesn't
okay.
do enough. And so by not having enough in your app, it just kind of causes your app to just it's like I'm looking for a more powerful solution. If you have too many features, it's too hard, right? It
Yeah,
becomes difficult for people to recognize and understand like where to go, how to start this whole thing. And if you instead can kind of find the perfect balance between the right number of features and making sure that it's got you know the things that should be automated are automated, the least number of steps to get there, you kind of reach this usability nirvana in the middle where you get the
right.
user who feels empowered by what they can do with this particular product, right? And so when I think about the way a design a design is evolving, it's about trying to balance the number of features. How do you onboard someone into this experience? How do you add the more complicated stuff without taking away from somebody who's discovering it for the first time? So a lot of people, struggle when they first approach an interface to even figure something out. As an
Right,
example, in Warsaken, we've been working on deck construction, right? Deck construction's kind of hard. It's not the most simple thing. You have to understand how to play just to
right,
even
right,
make it
right.
happen, right? One of the features that we're going to be releasing at some point in the near future after we get Blitz, beta out, is a button that just auto generates a deck based on
Sure.
what you have in your wallet, because we know what you've got and we know how
Right,
to make a deck. And we ask you a couple of like really simple questions, like here's three questions to ask the user. Do you want to have a deck that's more intel focused, where you're doing these kinds of like subterfuge type moves, or do you want to just blow stuff up, and you select answers to this and boom, we've created a deck for you. And we can do that because we're thinking through all of the usability of trying to just not have to skip over the deck construction and just get the deck. But then there's going to come a point where someone goes, I really want to dig in and learn the details of the nuance of deck construction, and I want to make sure that that turns out really well. So just thinking about that process, you want to make sure that there's a simple way to onboard people. Discoverability is simple, that you understand the jobs they're trying to do, and that if you're going to have any more advanced features or more complicated things that are harder to do, that there's an easy way for people to go from being sort of the base user to the next level advanced user that doesn't obstruct the base user or the new user from getting through their jobs that they're trying to do.
Yeah, and so let me ask you this: how much thought, or how long is the process of deciding where that button goes? That build your own deck. Like, is it just as simple as like front and center, or is this a stupid question?
No, it's great. So like how do you insert
Right.
a feature like that, right? So the first thing would be when you go to create a deck, that's the moment where you want to probably ask the user, you know, sort of the question, do you want to go and create your own deck manually, or do you want us to auto generate one?
Yeah.
And if you say I want to auto generate one, then I can spawn you into this experience. It's completely isolated. It's all about this very simple set of questions that lead to you
Yeah.
having a deck. Or you say, no, I want to manually do this. And then you go through and start selecting things, right? And that's okay. The other thing would be that there could potentially just be a button at the top of the deck details page that says generate me my deck. Like I've already done this, but
Right.
I've decided I want to just go ahead and create one. So choosing when those things get inserted, where they get inserted, and how how they show up on screen is more about trying to think through what are the moments where a user would actually want to make that decision, and what data will they lose if they make the wrong decision and they need to kind of like backpedal. And so the time it would take is completely independent on the dependent on the feature. And I think in this particular case it's really obvious. You want to start up front with that kind of a question. You want us to auto generate a deck for you, or do you want to build your own? That's a really straightforward thing to ask at the beginning. And if they don't know the answer, how you word it, the words that you use are really critical. That content design, which is what that's
Yeah.
called, will help kind of drive them towards what you think is probably the right solution for them based on their experience with the product.
Okay, so if I'm understanding the everything we talked about so far, as the process is concerned, so we start with, obviously we have an idea for an app, and then we're going to address the usability, right? And we're going to work on the user flow. How does a user achieve or complete the task that this app is designed to
Yeah.
resolve or so? And
Yeah.
so this is the point where I'll probably be using my whiteboard, like my physical whiteboard. I
Yeah.
would
Mhm.
get up there and draw a flow chart and get that figured out. And then, uh,
Yeah.
I,
No, hang on. You just touched on that. So the flow chart, that concept of a flow chart, like how does the user go through the experience? That's really critical, right? That early stage flow chart helps define every aspect of how you're going to assemble all of
huh,
these pieces together. So the more time you spend on that, the better you're likely going to have in terms of your end product, because you're going to make sure that you're doing that right. You're going to be critically thinking about that flow. How do people get from this part of the app back to this other part of the app?
huh,
Does should there be a link here? Does that even make sense? What kind of data needs to be relevant and available at this point? Should we automate that? Like all of those questions typically get answered around this like early flow
yeah.
wireframing, whiteboarding, sketching kind of stage.
So what I want to talk about some tools that I haven't. I guess I have installed, but I want to hear what you have to say about it's Figma. I also have Adobe XD installed, and neither of them, ironically, I don't know how to use either of them. Um, but
Understandable. It's understandable. They're new. They're design programs, right?
yeah. So here is, I believe this is Figma, right? And so I can
Mhm.
throw this to the chat. And is this completely, is this a freemium model or is it
Yeah, so there's a
free?
free version. So if you're just working in isolation, and you don't have a team, you can use this, I think, for free. I don't know if their terms, quite frankly, I've never not paid for it. So I don't know if the terms
Ah,
cover commercial use of product, but I believe that it may.
okay.
At the end of the day, though, like it's I think like $14 a month or something like that, and you can have the app. If you're already paying for Creative Cloud,
Yeah.
getting XD is kind of part of that. So if you're paying for Creative Cloud, it might be easier. Each one has their pros and cons.
Okay. So this is XD here. Which of the two would you recommend somebody with no experience get started with?
I think Figma is maybe the easiest because it
Okay.
doesn't really require you to install anything. You can send links out. It also works really well for prototype links. It's like once you've created the prototype
Oh,
within Figma, you can just send a link to someone and they can just open the Figma prototype directly in
gotcha.
their browser, on their phone, whatever it may be. The other thing is the collaborative features of Figma are really the thing that makes it what most people use it for.
Yeah.
Like if you create a file and you share me the link, you invite me to it,
Uh-huh.
we can literally start editing the same file together
Right.
live. And
Yeah.
that's pretty powerful. At a bare
Yeah.
minimum, you can add comments and kind of go through the process of collaborative design much easier within Figma.
That's a great point. A really great point, especially for what we're trying to do in our community here, like this group learning. Like, what a better
Yep.
way to encourage that is by sharing each other's designs. I love it. Time and
One of the
space.
things that's really tricky, I think, for people, you kind of mentioned you've never used these types of apps really before, and especially a developer of any kind really coming into Figma. How do you even like get to the pages? Like, how do you even get to the different parts of the
Right.
design? Like, how do you navigate this tool? Because it's a giant open canvas space,
Yeah, and
right?
it's super intimidating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be. It's actually super simple. Do you mind if I share my screen really
Yeah,
quick?
go for it. Go for it, dude.
All right, I'm gonna just share this this file I just created. So this is a blank file. I just created new. It's untitled. This is a brand new file, and we have this like canvas tool here that allows you to basically. This is like you can imagine saying, "I want to make a screen," and so you're going to drag a box that represents the screen size of the object you're going to create. And I have a bunch of predefined things over here, so I can say I'm going to grab an iPhone 8 frame, and now I've got an iPhone
Okay.
8
Yeah, yeah.
frame.
I've seen
And
that.
I can drag this around all over the place, which is
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. I think my camera's going to cut out again. It's doing that weird thing.
Yeah, all good. We can hear
Let
you.
me just stop the camera.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're good.
So within this, I can name this by double clicking on it. My screen, and then I can start changing properties about it over here in the properties panel. I can give
Uh-huh.
it some rounded corners if I want, and I can change the background color to some light gray or something like that.
Okay.
And I can just start dragging boxes by using these tools. Let's say I wanted to create like a two column layout for like, let's say I was going to
Yeah.
show off two NFTs or something like that.
Okay.
I can create like this is maybe a representation of those two NFTs, and I don't know what they're going to be in the actual final assets that are going to be created. Like the what visuals would actually get loaded here. And so I'm just going to create a couple of boxes with
Okay.
some representing something. And I can lay them out wherever they make sense to put on the screen, and I can add effects to them like drop shadows and things like that.
Yeah. So we're building, I guess, essentially like similar to how I would be working in like an Illustrator.
Yep, exactly.
Does it have any like pre-made like components maybe, or like let's say like I just want like a regular like nav bar or menu bar and just horizontal,
Yep.
give me some menu items. Do I have to build that from scratch, or does it have, this isn't a rhetorical
Well,
question.
components really help with that kind of stuff. So, like as an example, let's say you wanted to create a navigation bar that was,
Yeah.
going to run along the bottom of your app.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You could say, well, I'm going to have it have like three icons on it or something. And so,
Mhm.
in as a designer, I might just simply represent those icons by circles or something, um, so that I don't have to worry too much about what they actually are right now today. And I can space them out or whatever and kind of make them all perfect. And maybe I work really hard on visualizing what this navigation menu would look like. Once I'm done with it, I can create a component out of it. And then
Oh,
once I create a component, I can drag and drop as many copies as I want. And then if I go and change anything about that, it reflects automatically in these other copies. So then I can go and put that, in here as the
Wait,
Uh,
say that again? So, you made copies of it, and then if you made changes to one and it made it across all of them?
yeah,
Or wow.
yeah. So this is a great way for designers to just make sure that they're working on, the latest version of everything. So you might
Okay.
have one designer on your team that's doing just the navigation and component libraries, like just the buttons and what they look like. And then later, like I've got these three icons, and I'm like, hey, we're gonna have three icons. I don't know what they're gonna look like yet,
Right, right, right.
but just know that I've got these three icons. Well, now I've got these three icons and they're displayed on screen. If I go in and start, changing them, like I changed this one to
Right, right,
be,
right.
let's say blue. As a different designer working on like the page layouts, I don't even have to worry about what the nav
No.
looks like. They're automatically fixing it for me. And one of the really cool, powerful things that it does is you can create with the components, you can create properties. So you can say, I want to create a variant of this. And then within that variant, you've got property one equals default. I can say something like nav one, and then I can create more variants of this. Let's see. I can't remember if I just hit plus. I think I just hit plus. So nav two. I think I just accidentally renamed that.
Okay.
Sorry. Hang on one second. It's
Yeah,
been a
you're
little
good, you're
while since
good.
I made one of these.
I guess I'm not familiar with Canva. Give me Splinter. I'm sure Brandon is. I'll take your word for it that it's a pretty good tool as well.
Yeah, Canva's kind of similar. To okay, just making this. I don't remember what I'm supposed to do here. There's a way to see the ones. Excuse me. Dang, I can't seem to remember. I'll have to look that up really quick. But basically, you get like multiple copies of this variant, and then each time you
Oh,
modify that, then you can actually just like select this one and change to a different variant. So instead of
gotcha.
O2, I can swap to something totally different.
And they'll like so when you, I guess when you switch the variant, it switches all variants that of the same. So like, would it be like a dark mode, light mode type thing where you could quickly switch, or is that not? Am I not thinking of?
You can make it so that yeah, there's like different. You could do that and have two different versions of like the light theme and the dark theme. It might be that you're showing like the selected state of the menu
Oh, gotcha. Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
That's probably one of the easiest
Neat.
examples, and that's what I was trying to do here. I just don't know why it's being weird about it to me, but it is what it is. I don't know. I honestly cannot remember all of a sudden how to do this. I thought I
Ah,
was super smart, but I just am blinking. But anyway, so you can create that element and then you can use it in all of your screens, across all of your product. And that way, anytime you need to make changes, you can come back later.
yeah.
And then just from a prototyping perspective, right? Like if you want to make this into a prototype, you can create interactions and say, I want to, whenever I tap on this object, um, I want to go to navigate to this other page, and then it kind of creates the link. And so now if I hit the play button here, it's going to load up the Figma
Oh,
as if it's
wow.
in an iPhone. And then I can click on this one and it'll go to the other screen.
Wow.
So you can create really, you can kind
Yeah.
of imagine how quickly you could build out fairly complicated different kinds of interactions there that would
Right.
work pretty well.
Right. So, I guess I think you said something about like your other screen. So, if I remember, like Figma, every time I've ever gotten a Figma file, it was like this really zoomed out view
Yeah.
of like a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that's super
Yeah.
intimidating
So
for
if
me for
you
whatever
if
reason.
you if you hit control and you use your wheel mouse, you can like zoom in on a given screen.
Yeah.
And you can kind of hold space bar and drag. And that by itself is you know,
Yeah.
great. You can navigate the entirety of the app that way, pretty consistently.
But what is why is it like I mean, that's I'm just supposed to put whatever wherever, or is there's or is it there's some design process that I should be following, like left to right, or does that make sense? I don't
I guess I kind of look at it from the perspective of storytelling. So
Okay.
I like to lay out, like a core job to be done would be listed in a set of screens going from left to right, illustrating how you would go through that particular set of steps. And then for a totally different one, I would come down here and you can throw titles.
Yeah.
This is going to be really small, but font on this. You can have, a title, and then you can have another title, and
Sweet.
you can also create pages. So like I can create a page that's like my components.
Oh.
And then I can go and move this item, to let's see, move to page components. And so now it's gone, but it's actually not gone. It's just right here.
I see.
And so you can have a whole page that's specifically components. You can actually create separate files that are just the components. That's one of the features of a paid subscription. Yeah,
Yeah.
Coleman's right. That's how we do a lot of design reviews. I mean, it's the thing that you would, it makes sense to kind of go through the designs together as a.
Yeah.
Oh, here, look, I figured out the variant.
Hey.
So now I could say, well, hey, look, oops. When I'm on this one, this is going to be nav. Let's see, this first one is going to be nav 01 equals 01. This is going to be nav equals 02, and then nav equals 3. And I can go back in here and say, well, I want this one to be the blue one, and I want this one to be the red one. Right? And then I can do the same thing for this. Swap this one to the red one, swap this one to the blue one. And then I could go back to that screen here, and I could say on this one, I don't want this to be 01 anymore. Whenever this page is on, I want it to be 02.
Nice.
You can kind of create these like elaborate sets of
Right,
design files, stuff
right.
like that, and you can componentize at any level. I'm a pretty big fan of just making sure that from a perspective of put my camera back on.
Yeah.
From the perspective of trying to create designs, you want to start iterating at smaller scales. Like if I had, let's say this is an individual item that would
Okay.
represent, just like a single NFT in my collection or something. I'll probably take this over here and just create like all the different ways that could look. All the I know these are just boxes, but like pretend that I would sit there and
Right.
go through and create custom designs, totally different ideas, push myself to come up with something completely unique for each one of these. And then after I had looked at a few of these and decided on one or two that I really thought were better than the rest of them, I would turn that into a component and then go reintegrate it everywhere in my designs.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. All right, so let me ask you this question. You started these two designs off with a cell phone, and I would imagine that that's not a coincidence, and you're following the mobile first methodology, is I guess what they would call it.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that? How important
Well,
is it?
I can tell you right now, mobile responsive, always start with mobile first. The reason to always start
So
with mobile
tough,
first.
though.
Yeah, it is. It's tough, but the reason that it's good to start that way is because it's tough.
Yeah,
It's so much harder to try and retrofit a desktop design into a mobile
yeah,
design than it is to take a mobile design and expand it out into a desktop view.
right.
And the problems that you run into, when you're going the mobile side into the desktop side as well, I've got too much space and I need to make it look nice, like I meant for it to be, used that way.
Right.
The opposite problems are much more complicated. They're like, wow, this whole entire chain of functionality can't even exist here. Like we got to like take this whole piece out right now.
Right, and
Um,
I feel you there. I've had those.
and one of the more like just really quickly example here I can give you would be, let's say for instance that you're creating, a desktop application, and you've got kind of like this idea of a master details view. So you can kind of imagine that maybe there's like, some line item here that represents, a single thing you're going to do. And I'm being super rough with these designs, by the way. But like, let's say you had like 5 items that you wanted here, or maybe this is really long. Maybe this is like your email list, or anything complicated.
Okay.
This is your list. You click on one of these, and then it's going to open the details of that item, right? When you're thinking about how this turns into a mobile view, right? You, instead of doing it that, this is all one view in desktop. In a mobile view, you'll kind of do something like this, where you start with one screen, and then once you select something, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to actually did something I did. So now, instead of you have two different pages when you do it in mobile than you would if you did it on desktop. And so understanding how to navigate that, and what does that really mean, right? Like, you kind of basically at this point need, a back button
Right.
to make that work, right? You've got to have some way to go back on this screen to go to the previous one. And that's really critical to understand, like, where are those pieces at? And then on the desktop version, obviously, you don't have to have any of that. It's all there.
Yeah. That's a very interesting. I don't know that I've ever thought to take that approach, add stuff for navigation and usability in mobile only. It's because I've never designed. Like I know that mobile first is how you're supposed to do it, and I've tried to. I've tried to. It's just like I said, it's pretty tough. But I never thought of taking that approach, where it's just going to be basically a different path altogether, right? It might
Yeah.
look similar, but
Well, I mean, they should be the same code underlying, right? Like that, in the end, that's the right way to do it. You want to have a mobile view that responsively adapts to using, CSS breakpoints, to, grow to a desktop view.
yeah, Emily agrees with Rockford. So the process is simpler if you kind of like I know I need a page to do. Page will do it. With we'll go here. We'll look in it, et cetera, et cetera. But that's my way. My brain just yeah, yeah. No, I think I'm with you. I think I understood the majority. Can start large, modify by going smaller.
So that's, I think, the way I was, the point I was making is, I think it's easier to design for mobile first than it is to design for desktop
Right,
first.
I would 100% agree. Because lots of things break, and then once you factor in uh, all of the browser issues and all of that.
Yeah, it becomes a lot more complicated for sure.
Yeah,
And
big time.
and in the end, you're just trying to make sure that it feels like the same experience.
Right.
If you do it right, like we did this with Warsaken, you can open up the mobile app. Media queries suck. Depends on what you're doing with them, I guess. And everybody's got their own opinions about like what's the right development approach. We use React for all of Warsaken, so it's all built on React, the app, the game, everything. And because we did mobile first designs, and we've used breakpoints that are intelligent. When you swap from being in mobile to desktop, it's all the same interface, nothing changes. And so you can even just download that as a web app, and that's actually how we recommend people to use our app anyway.
So it's a
Mhm.
progressive web app?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah, and
that's the
it
beauty of React, that it comes, like, with that built in almost.
well, and all you have to do as a user to download the app is just either click the download button on the screen. I think if it's a Chromium
Yeah,
browser,
yeah, yeah, and then yeah,
or add it to your home screen. But at the end of the day, you're able to get the full-fledged app experience without having to install it from the App Store.
Yeah, man, that we were exploring that, and I know that, O'Little, our front end dev, he actually, built one of the functionalities that way, added all the PWA stuff, and I was familiar with what a PWA is, progressive web app, and, um, you know, what those new things were when I looked at create React app, like what's all this service worker stuff. So I understood all of that. I never implemented it, and I was looking at it the other day, and the console is just completely different. It's got all kinds of cool stuff in there. It's working, doing this and that. I'm looking at Warsaken cards on.
Hmm.
Yeah, dude, you guys fucking nailed this. Let me ask you really quickly.
Yeah.
Did I where would you I wanna submit your guys' site for, like, best of 2022 in React. I'm not even kidding, dude, like, I think this is a hands down winner. It's by far, like, mind blowing
Wait till the
for React.
game's actually
Yeah,
out and you
dude,
can, that's the beauty of it, right? Is that
yeah, where can I
there's so
submit
much really
for
great stuff.
I'll have to Google that one, get the Legion to vote on that, man.
Yeah,
And
there's a
then
lot of really good work that's gone into the app for sure. Um, and I think, I appreciate the compliments. I think at the end of the day, we're pretty happy with what we've been able to create. And I was just going to kind of show how easy it is to build a clean looking interface within
yeah,
Figma really quick. Just to kind of give an example, and I was going to use some more Saken assets to showcase it. So, like, we have a screen that in our app that's going to basically be like you're waiting for an opponent, right?
yeah.
And so if I were to just do this from scratch, if I go waiting for
Yeah.
So I create some text elements. I can play around with, like, this kind of looks junky to me, so I can do some things like play around with the way that the letters are
Right, right, right.
stacking. Oh, wait, wrong one. Tweak some
So,
of this.
how much of this, like, all this kerning and line height and font and, like, that's like, typography is its, a whole own thing, and so is, like, colors and mastering that, and, like, there's definitely tools out there, and I think that you will learn some things along the way, but, like, how from, like, a high level as a professional UX or, UI dev, how important is it that you know the intricacies of those? Like,
I mean, it's pretty critical.
yeah,
I would
okay,
say I would say that if you have a designer on your team, right, and they're working on this kind of stuff, you're gonna want to trust their insights on how to make that look good for you, because that's kind of their job.
yeah, 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 yeah,
There's some things like this right now. I'm doing a quick overlay here, because that text, like, it looks okay with this particular image, but let's say I wanted this to be dynamic. I want to make sure that that graphic looks good at all times. And so I'm going to
yeah,
create kind of like a overlay that basically makes sure that the visuals are always going to produce enough contrast from an accessibility perspective.
yeah. And accessibility was something I wanted to touch on also.
Yeah, it's a big part of the making sure that the process, of people using your app goes well for those that have, like, there's a lot of different kinds of impurities that,
Uh-huh.
are challenging, for people using your app. Some people have poor or no eyesight. Some people have cognitive issues.
Right.
That's one of the more under served ones, in the space. Some people can't hear. So if you
Mhm.
can't display the text, if you can't make sure that the all of your images have ARIA tags and all your labels have
Right, right,
ARIA
right,
tags, then they can't use their screen readers to find those things. And you need to think about your hierarchy of information, on your page very similar to like a reading mode. Like, what would
right, right,
happen
right, right.
if you took all the pictures out and you just took all the text and you put it on a screen and you stacked it from top to bottom and it had to read those things out, like
Does it make sense at
Does it
all?
make sense? Yeah.
Right.
And then navigation's another big one. You really want to make sure that there's a connection between, like let's say you had a bunch of tabs and then you had a list view and then you had some details. You want to use things like keyboard navigation, tabbing wise, to jump between entire sections of navigation, not individual items. You want them to get focus on a specific area, like a nav bar, and then use arrow keys and things like that to navigate left and right or up and down that list,
Right.
so
Tab
that they
index and stuff like that.
yeah, so the tab index is really critical to make sure that the people who are having issues, they don't have to go through every single list view
Right.
item just to get to the next one on the, some navigation. You want them to be able
Yeah.
to jump between all the different main elements and then use arrow keys to, to navigate within.
Yeah, that was like when I first learned that. It's like, yeah, setting your tab index, like, because I use a mouse. I never have to use the tab. Why would it matter? What? And then once you realize, you're like, oh man, like, yeah, you want somebody to hit your website without a mouse and be only tabbing and go exactly where they need to go. And I dropped that W3 Schools. I feel like that's a really good site for beginners. So if you don't know what an ARIA tag is, you can learn more about them there. Don't be a dick. Like write your ARIA tags. It's not that much more code. Yeah, there we go. It's made me yellow because I worked daily, but I never forget this fact. Yeah, color. Can you mention color theory? Like that's a whole.
Yeah, color theory
It's super interesting.
color theory is theory, right? So you have to remember that when you're dealing with all of this kind of stuff, because it's not color fact, right? That's
Right.
maybe the better way to look at it. So there are certain colors that have kind of like known impacts on people, uh, and it's tough to get super specific, because the minute you think you're right, someone else will, have had a really poor experience in their life with a particular color, and it doesn't, they
Right,
hate
right,
that
right.
they hate that color. So an example might be, maybe you love orange. Well, why do you love orange? Maybe it has to do with the fact that your dad was super awesome. He gave you an orange car when you
Right,
were
right, right.
16. Your bedroom where you had your beautiful childhood was painted orange. Your favorite toy was orange. Like, you happen to love the flavor of the fruit orange, and
Right.
so when you get older, you're like, man, I just think everybody loves orange. Don't you love orange? Everybody loves it. To
Right.
you, orange is the
Yeah.
color. But in reality, there's going to be like, another person who had the exact opposite experience with orange. Their girlfriend broke up with them, as their
Right, right,
first
right.
love, and the card that they handed, him was a orange colored card. Or
Right, right,
they
right.
got into, their junker that they drove everywhere broke down all the time, it was orange. It doesn't take very much, I think, to have that kind of reaction. Your eye can only see three colors, right? The human eye can only see
Right.
RGB. So whenever you think about CMYK for print stuff, or RGB for the real, screen technologies, you're either talking about the reflection of light from an object that's real in the real physical world, and
Yeah.
pigment and CMYK is what defines what colors get reflected back into your eye, or you're talking about the projection of color from a screen. And so you're only able to see red, green, and blue ultimately, and you see different levels of those based on your own DNA. And so that's why there are people who are colorblind for certain types of
Yeah.
colors. And you just really can't guarantee that anybody's going to have a particular preference on a specific color. You can kind of lean in on the idea that blue is the most universally liked color. And
Right.
I think that has a lot to do with the fact that most people see blue, even those that are colorblind for the most part. and,
Yeah.
s- and so blue is just prominent. We also
Well,
use
yeah,
it neutrally in a lot of places, like it's visible in the sky, you wear your blue
sure.
jeans, like that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, if you look at major tech companies logos, I mean, just think about it. How many like Dell? Facebook. There's it just the list just goes on and on and on with some variants of blue. I could even Google. I would say is blue. So I guess that's a nice segue there. How do you approach picking your theme colors or like your brand colors more so, not necessarily theme? And
Yeah.
let's real quick. Let's talk. I guess talk about logo and how all of that incorporates.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different disciplines in the design space that there's lots of different kinds of developers, there's lots of different kinds of
Mhm.
designers. And so there are illustrators and graphic illustrators, they're the ones who are going to do the best at kind of creating a logo.
Yeah.
Can someone who doesn't do that but does other kinds of design come in and do a logo? Sure. They may not be as good about it, or they may not put as much effort
Right.
into it or do as good of a job, but they could absolutely do it. And depending on the logo, it may not matter.
Yeah.
Typography you mentioned, choosing a typeface or
Oh,
creating
man.
your own is its own art.
Wait, you're
And
not supposed to just use Roboto on everything?
I mean, you can. It's a great font. Like Robato's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
In when it comes to like deciding on a color palette, I think a lot of that you can do a lot of research on like what are competitors doing. You just mentioned all the
Oh,
tech
that's a good
companies
point.
all have blue logos, and a lot of them have blue logos. That's a great way to say I'm like all of these others, right? I'm similar to all of
Right.
these. But you could also say I want to stand out, and so I'm going to go do mine in red because I want mine to look different than everybody else's, right? So it just
Right.
depends on what your goals are. When we were thinking about the color palette for Warsaken the cards,
Uh-huh.
we wanted something that stood out as its own layer above the cards very clearly, and so we chose this sort of banana yellow that I really loved in terms of how I was using it. We also liked the idea that in certain more special cards we would use white to step it up. In terms of
Ah.
color temperature,
Yeah,
even
yeah, yeah.
though white is in when you're talking about print and pigment,
Right.
it's the lack of color.
Sure, sure.
White is actually the hottest color, and so
Yeah.
your eye will be drawn to it. Like you look at the screen right now, his head here and this logo and this number are definitely jumping out. The color of the font for waiting for opponent is jumping
Yeah.
out because it's the biggest on the screen, but you're still getting your eye drawn to these different
Right.
white hot parts. So we chose with some of the cards to make them have white instead of yellow to draw extra attention.
Yeah. Like, it's super interesting to think about how CMYK and it not truly being viable, like RGB. I know, well, my reds and other people's reds are different, but then our magentas are universal, even though we are seeing two different things.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean the weird part is, like, I know what blue looks like to me, and I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that you know what blue looks like to you, but do we really know that those are the same color? Like, it's,
Right.
like,
Right,
I
right, right.
can't see your eyes, so I have no
Right,
idea,
right,
you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, it's so funny that we're talking about this now. I just learned from Valor and Venom like last night some CMYK facts that I had no idea about, and they look that dull on the screen, but that's not how it's going to look in print. Like I didn't know that. I just thought that CMYK color sucked, and they always look dull. And yeah, she explained that it's designed for not having a backlit screen like the RGB does. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, man.
you can kind of imagine, that the way that your eye perceives color will impact how you feel about it. And so everybody's going to have different experiences, and that's why it's color theory and not color factor.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so I looked at my competitors. I decided on a color color scheme. I hired a logo artist. We got that in now. I did my usability, so my flow chart and everything is going to be based off of. I did a few mock-ups with my mobile first design in Figma. I kind of have a good idea of where I'm going with that. And now I think I'm ready to code. Uh, do you have any recommendations on CSS frameworks or yeah, just CSS
Yeah,
frameworks?
that's a good question. I honestly think the smartest thing for a designer to do is to let those decisions be given to the developers, right? Like,
Mhm.
I can make CSS, and if you tell
Mhm.
me the framework you're using, I can kind of tweak some stuff to make sure that it fits within the framework. Same thing with JavaScript. Like I've never done React in the past. But I know raw JavaScript like the back of my hand.
Sure.
So like it was not too hard to get adapted into that like abstraction layer language.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think at the end of the day, that's a decision that developers should make around what technologies they think are most beneficial for optimizing for a good user experience, right? And you should make those decisions based on the developers getting together and saying we need data to come in at this rate, we need these services because we've got this is where we want to host our data, this blockchain we're going to interact with is going to cause us to need to do this particular approach. Like whatever those things are, that's what the technical constraints of the design should be following effectively. And so when it comes to getting started, I like to go hands off in those decisions. I like to
Okay.
promote what I've seen work well in the past. Like I think React is a great language.
Yeah.
A platform. I think just making sure you're using CSS and good breakpoints is a good strategy. And if you're not
Yeah.
doing something too crazy, then I probably can adapt to whatever you've got. And most
Right.
designers are willing to try it out and figure it out, as they go.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm currently using MUI 5, Material UI V5, and I believe that's based on a Google spec called Material Design.
Yeah.
Is that right?
hmm Yeah,
Uh,
so Google, so every, honestly, I think every company tries to create their own design language.
okay, I didn't know that.
It's just it's a thing, right? Designers, we get uppity about it. We love it. We're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we're gonna make the design language that's gonna change the future. Just so happens, I think that with material design, Google kind of nailed it. They blended the right amount of all the different aspects of
Okay.
design that are critical. It's been around for a long time, but it's fairly timeless.
Yeah.
Prior to that, there was a couple of competing design styles, like you saw, like Metro, which Microsoft put out when they were doing the Windows Phone. There was skeuomorphic design that was very popular within the Apple iPhone in the early days, and all of that stuff has kind of adapted or changed
Yeah.
over time. We had more solid icons. A lot of companies have moved to more outline based icons, and they get filled in at the time that they're um, you know uh, coming together, or selecting or something like that, depending on how they're being used. So there's a lot of different, trends that can be kind of pulled off or uh, tweaked. There's another one that's come out that's fairly recent, called Neomorphic Design. It's actually not that new really at this point, but um, it's kind of a halfway between skeuomorphic and which is a very, so just for your
Huh.
audience, skeuomorphic is like if I wanted to make an app that was a notepad UI, I would like go into the real world, see what a notepad looks like, and try and make something that represents that. And it's a digital representation of a real world object. Neomorphic is kind of attempting to try and create these like visual layering elements that kind of make it feel like it's tactile and you can touch it and stuff.
Oh, I've
Um,
never heard these words. I just found this top though.
yeah, they're not. To me, I think the thing I would say is Google's framework, the material design, is a
Uh,
very timeless design that will probably work no matter what happens in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of
yeah.
design. Neomorphic probably won't because people haven't gravitated towards it. Um, Skeuomorphic is old, and I don't think we'll ever really go back to that. It's so limiting. Like when you're thinking about the digital space, you have an infinite number of possibilities, and so doing anything you want within that space seems like the way to go instead of trying to
Right.
constrain yourself to the physical world. And the representations people have there of what that can be.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Kenny says, been working doing VIP and asset security with my team and realized I was stuck on mobile for a bit. And Princess Phoenix, hi, what's up? We're nerding out with Brandon from Warsaken talking UX design front to back. It's been pretty incredible.
There's a couple of books out there people could go and kind of research. There's some from the main thing I would look at from a design perspective, and kind of especially how developers think about it, is like the adaptation of the grid, right? Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
there's a grid if I were to take this design
Yeah.
and kind of draw like what's happening here and
Yeah. Like should
color
be
it,
yep.
I'm creating layering that kind of illustrates where the frames are. Should this be how big this total group is? Let's see, 340. So I
Yeah.
might do something like
Okay.
113 or something like that, and then this is blue or something. Anyway, so the idea is like, what is the grid layout between all of these?
Right, 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 right.
What's the spacing between them? And so, like
Yeah.
as an example, I might not want my text to exceed this spot right here. So, well, if I don't want it to exceed 2/3 of the layout, I may need to shrink the font to
Yeah.
get it to a point where it fits. And then I can hide those different layers and kind of see what that looks like, and maybe that looks better.
Cool, cool.
So there's a
All
lot
right.
of there's a lot of that you can play around with too.
Yeah, man. All right. I wanted to have you critique the latest NFTG site, but now I'm feeling like super nervous and self-conscious.
Let's do it. No, no, let's do it. I'm happy to
Uh,
talk about it. I think at the end of the day, critiques are
yeah, yeah, yeah,
about
yeah. I
improving
just
and coming
didn't
up with.
expect 55 viewers, but it's it's all good. Hey, here we go. I got
Here,
it.
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, dude. All right. So this is our homepage here. Got some fun mouse moving animations. I don't know if you can see that,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, I can
So
see
let
it.
me make sure. I mean, so that the text is small now that I'm critiquing it, right?
Yeah. So what do you think about when you first get here? Like, what are the impressions you have of this interface?
I'm definitely drawn to the thing that's moving on the right, which
Mhm.
takes me uh, away. Like I don't know, it takes me away from the text or so. The text is telling me that it's kind of important, but not really. Just read it if you want to. I'm going to look at likely the colors, and then the join our Discord button is gonna pop out at me, and I'll
Yep.
likely be
Yep.
aiming to click that.
Yeah, so you kind of hit it right on the head, right? What is your call to action? What is the purpose or function of this page, right? What's the job to be done here?
Yeah, and I would think that that call to action uh, would be it
The join our
there.
Discord, right?
Yeah.
So you just said as an example, hey, I see this cool like floating thing with the logo, and it draws your attention maybe away from the text. What if hypothetically, just as an example, if you're really drawn to this like floating block element that's on the page, and your goal is to get them to join the Discord, why not make that thing the call to action, right? What if the
Mm,
join our Discord was right in the middle of that floating block thing, right? Or something
yeah.
to that effect, right?
Yeah.
Draw the attention where it makes sense. So if your job, and this is the whole point, if your job to be done is get people to join your Discord, then you want to make sure that that's the core function of the design. That the design is directing all traffic towards that purpose.
Gotcha.
And then you can kind of question how much text is necessary to support that. Like how important is it? You can kind of evaluate that.
Okay, how do you feel about, animations like this? Uh, and
I
it's
think
not actually where it needs to be, like, this is kinda off-centered. This is kinda buggy still,
no, it's okay. I think animation's great. It helps. Animation, and especially in websites and web experiences, is a delighting factor. Like designers like to put that stuff in because it
right.
helps people who are experiencing it get kind of a little bit of joy out of what they're seeing on screen. I think to make sure if animations are effective, you want to make sure that they don't go overboard.
This was probably a bit over so I had it, like, limited to just the background,
Mhm.
and so it wasn't over but then it was screwing up, showing on every page, and, so I tried to play around with the scripting a bit, and,
Well, and so this
this
is
is how
like
I left
probably a
it.
particle generation of some
Yeah,
kind,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
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 I
maybe
aim to have it disappear.
play around with like trying to, I think it is a little overstated, but that's only just because I'm watching the animation instead of reading the text, right?
Right.
So I get the sense that there's prizes, confetti, exciting stuff, and I could win something, right? So that makes perfect sense. Maybe the animation could, the particles could be smaller, maybe a little less. Maybe they've got some opacity,
And
so they're not too intense, but they're
yeah,
still there. Maybe they're more spread out. Like you could play around with different ways to still deliver that animation, but not maybe go overboard.
right, noted. Yeah, some variation of particles. Okay, then add space. Um, here, this is
Yeah,
something that I don't have any experience whatsoever in.
I mean, you're doing ads, and there's really nothing else that you can do there, right? You've got an ad block. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay, and then streaming content. I guess module. This will update with whatever the day is. So, like, Monday through Thursday, we have at least one signature stream. Obviously, worst sake and Wednesdays. Um, so this will change and just kind of just highlight it. Um,
Yeah, and
like,
and again, I would like, what's the job? So this, you can think about like these individual slices or sections of your
yeah,
page as each having their own clear like call to action function.
right,
Like what's its goal? Again, like the job to be done here is you want them to go to the calendar. It
right,
looks
yeah,
like, right? So if you
yeah,
want them to go to the calendar, here's one of those fundamental UX questions. Why send them to a separate calendar? Can you embed the calendar right here?
yeah.
Right? So that's one of those things where, like, why force them to click on something if you can embed it right here? And sometimes technically that's just not a possibility. But imagine if you just embedded the calendar right here, and maybe even you kind of take some cues from cable television guides, TV guides. Maybe there's a live
Right.
stream visual, going on right there. And I think
That's a great
it's
question, though.
it's these are the questions that you have to ask yourself when you're coming up with the design. What's the job to be done? What's our goals? Those things will radically impact where you put stuff, why you put it there, or even if it's there at all. And I think they have a much bigger impact on the design than the color you use. Like if I was thinking about this and you wanted to say, well, maybe this is exactly what you've got to do and what you want to do. See,
Yeah.
full calendar could be a more prominent, more emphasized button here. Like it could
Right.
be that same color of purple as that Discord was,
Yeah.
and draw your attention more clearly to it.
Yeah, and you're right, there could be more data on here. Don't think that's linked, but let's see if this is technically where it would take you. Yeah. So, and right now so this would be the reason why it needs to be its own page. I guess the amount of data that I'm wanting to,
Well, and you've got this kind of laid out in a list form.
yeah,
What if it was more hypothetically, just as an example, you know, TV guides, and this is what I was talking about earlier. TV guides have been doing this for a really long time. Like the old school TV guide channel. I don't know if you remember that,
yeah, they do.
but also
Gold Heart.
most of the, like, if you were to go get Xfinity right now today and start watching TV, you would get, in some cases, when you're watching live TV, you just be seeing a schedule like this, right? They have
Yeah,
a design for that allows you to see, like, the time slots and the specific dates and stuff. Maybe there's a different representation or treatment that you could use for this data that might make it more easily understandable. Like you've got, some of these things have like a title and a colon next to
right.
them. Maybe that's all that's the information that's necessary, and you only provide that basic piece, and then they can click on something to see the more detail, title that's there.
Ah,
Ways that you can kind of break it down and think through some of that, usability.
yeah. So, all right. What about my drop down menu here?
I mean, it looks
It-
great visually. It looks great. Again, what are your jobs to be done with this menu? Where are you trying to take people? What do you want
yeah.
them to do?
To the pictures are the highlights of each. It's kind of categorized.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, whatever's the picture is also the first hyperlink, whatever that is. That's where I would want to drive them to.
And with menus like this, I think it's important to understand, like, how do you intend the menu to grow over time? Like, you're going to start with what you've got right now. How do you intend to expand on that? Like, where would you add new stuff, and how would that kind of play into these major categories? But I like the pictures. I think the pictures definitely make, your eye go into to drawing. You're drawn into them. Whether you think of them as something you can click on or not, that's a
Yeah.
question. Like, you could do something to try and make it feel more interactive. Hovering over them seems to work, but what if you're not on a hovering device? It may look like just kind of a header. So being careful with trying to make sure that there's a clear call to action, even in pictures, that you want to put in.
Yeah. So how about the spacing and what do you see here? Why do I have 2 pictures? I don't know, dude.
I mean, again, it's like, you'll hear me say this repeatedly. What's the job to be done here? Are you trying to get them to click on the link to go to, um, you know,
So
like, can they click on one of those? Does it take them
yeah.
somewhere? Is it just a
Now
visual?
should it? Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's just taking up, I guess, it serves no purpose other than visual aesthetics.
Well, it has the purpose of trying to brand this page a little bit, right? Like,
Right,
this
and
is the
communicate what's
redemption.
going on here,
Yeah,
like,
this is
you
the
have one thing
redemption
that's
page, right?
burning, the other one's broken, like one of those fancy, living room pictures that you have, right? And so, obviously, we're doing something, to destroy these tickets on this page, right? And so, what is that? And then it just wants, I put it all the way at the bottom,
I think this content, for example, has more value than those pictures do,
okay.
right? And so, just my own take on it,
Yeah,
it might make more sense to try and elevate some of the content you have here
okay.
higher up the page. How can you make this the hero of the page? Because
God,
whenever you land on a new page, you kind of want to have a hero or some clear primary set of content and graphic.
yeah,
I think, there's some really great content you've got down below that's also, it looks like dynamic. That could be really cool up higher. Like
okay,
this triple thing that you've got right above
yeah,
this. This is another great example, top prizes. Like, how could that get higher? I would just think about, like, what could you do to try and make it clear that you're still on this redemption page, or you're going to burn these tickets, um,
yeah,
but also still communicate this idea of, what the prizes are, and elevate that information. I think that would be it's definitely more compelling, this content.
okay, and, so now what do you think of, this? This is what I really would want feedback on. So here's one of my biggest complaints about when I go to, marketplaces. I don't wanna call anybody out.
Mhm.
I have to go, I have to go 2 or 3 links deep sometimes to get at the data that I want. Like, some of them have, like, the really nice tooltip popovers, but if I move my mouse to try to get, like, I need to copy that asset ID. Why are you making the tooltip disappear when I take my mouse off of the corner? Like,
Yeah.
now I have to click into it, and then that's where I go to get, the asset ID, and it's odd because they have, like, the click to copy functionality, but they you have to do an API call to get all of the inventory, and it's just, why not give the users access to everything on, like, in one spot, and pack it all in. There's kind of like a lot going on here, right? And space for more. I feel like if I really wanted to pack in data here, I probably could.
Well, I think there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind. So the first one, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but cognitive load is a really important factor. So
Okay,
density of information causes an increase in cognitive load. So people see, like, just a lot going on, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to look. I don't know where the buttons are. I don't." And it creates this sense of, like,
okay,
anxiety, or a level of uneasiness around your interface. So the lower you can bring that cognitive load, the more comfortable they'll be within that experience. So then the separate question I would so that was sort of what you were talking about. I could load this up. Well, that you
yeah,
could, but maybe you want to be careful not to overdo it. Um, the other thing to think about would be, um, Yeah. Well, and actually, you want to know something? This ties back to accessibility. There are people who struggle cognitively to remember where they are.
Huh.
And I have found this to be an increasingly more common thing with people and users of the younger generations, but also older people who have been using interfaces on mobile devices a lot. So we get all this, constant fighting for our attention, notifications popping up, new apps there, little bubbles with numbers in them that mean something, and like you might pick up your phone. I had actually, I'll give you an example. I had someone tell me they picked up their phone because someone asked them for a phone number for a buddy of theirs. They picked
Huh.
up their phone, unlocked the screen, saw the Facebook icon, saw that it had a bubble next to it, tapped on it, went into the Facebook app, and completely forgot about the physical person standing in front of them.
Right.
And they got frustrated and walked away.
Right. Yeah.
Because
I
and they were like, just scrolling Facebook, like that is, there are people who forget quickly where they are, what they're doing, and what their goals were about coming to this interface. And so if you
right.
can't help them understand that really quickly with like big titles, clear understanding of context, that can really actually be a pretty big factor in usability. And it's an accessibility requirement in my mind to try and build interface that's uh,
I kinda do too, dude. I've definitely done that.
that's the point, right? Like that's the point. We
Yeah.
all kind of do it to some degree, but I think some people really struggle with it, and some of it has to do with like literal, differences in the way our brain anatomy is.
Yeah.
And so you can't predict how someone's going to look at your interface. So you want to make sure you're not overdoing it with content because it can become overwhelming for someone who just is trying to grasp where they are. Um, in terms of the hover, hover states, clicking on a button,
Yeah.
tooltips are tricky because tooltips are actually,
So I got
excuse
one on
me,
the homepage. These here are
excuse me.
tooltips.
Yeah, tooltips can be tricky because they're good for people who are mouse users, but they don't function at all for people who are mobile users, or you have to do some extra thinking about
Right,
how mobile
right,
is going to
right.
interact with them. So it's important to understand like what is the mobile experience, and if you do mobile first, you can think about that first and then figure out how you might add to your experience by
Right.
enabling, mouse hover kinds
So
of
I
things.
think, if I'm not mistaken, I think these can be, click open, but then that's gonna be a lot of space on a phone, but then also, like, I don't know, I'm a big fan of, like data being accessible, but in not intrusive or in a way where, um, it's blocking everything up and I don't feel overwhelmed, but if I need it, I know that I can go hover on this or click on that.
I
Uh,
think I think if you truly look at it, um, depending on the way you design the interaction, some people won't know that they can hover on it at all.
right, right,
So you
right.
have to be careful to like if you're going to make something hoverable and that there's going to be some interaction there, which is really cool. That you remember me talking about the usability arc. It's
Yeah.
making sure that those features are additive to the core discoverability, that no one's blocked by not understanding that those are tooltips, that there's another way they can
Okay.
click on something to bring it up.
Yeah, you're right. There's no other way to find get that at this time. There's no other way to
Yeah.
see all of that in one easy to see spot.
And going back to accessibility, if you're hovering tooltips, depending on how you implement them, may or may not be very good for the screen readers on people who, for people who have limited, visibility.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, so I had to put that.
That is dummy content. I don't know if you knew that.
Huh. Like I was getting feedback on it, like, oh, it's my profile. Like, come on, dude. Like, you're
Love it.
not me. You don't want to be. Badges too colorful, too many, too.
No, I think badges, like it depends. We actually we're working on badges for Warsaken. So we want to have like achievements in the game. And when you get an achievement, you're going to have a badge you can showcase.
Yeah.
But we want to we have this versus screen when you're going to
Uh,
play someone that shows the badges. that you have, but we're like, we just want to have a place where you can select your favorite 3 to display within the app. But then there's probably, going to be an account page where you can see all of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we're just going to display them, even though they're chaotic and different colors and different designs. They all kind of fit within the same box, and that's okay. I think that's great.
Yeah, Kenyo says emotes are also a new typography and storytelling tool for humans like hieroglyphs to the Egyptians. 100% agree with that.
Oh man,
You can communicate a lot nowadays with a single emoji, you know?
yeah, 100%.
Um, yeah. All right, sweet. Welcome, Raiders. Um, Brandon, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're not feeling well.
I've been sick for a week.
Would you like to? Thank you so much for the feedback.
No, it's good. It's
I'm going to
great.
implement at least two of the things that I heard between you and the audience. So thank
Yeah,
you
and
so
let me
much
know
for
if
that.
there's any more, feedback I can provide. Honestly, at the end of the day, like those are just opinions, right? Like my perspective is just an opinion, just like anybody else's. I just happen to have been doing it for a while, but I think
Yeah, yeah.
at the end of the day, like if you got to do what you got to do for your business, for your technology and the constraints you're up against, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Why so many raids? And you know what? It's like I almost wanted to like turn them off for this because I didn't want the streams to be about anything other than like code and dev and learning. But now I feel super guilty, so I gotta.
No, it's great. It's good.
These guys all raiding us, man.
Just have everybody go check out Warsaken while they're at it. I think you'll
Yeah,
find
yeah,
something.
absolutely. Do you have shit? No, the beta's not out yet, right?
Beta's not out yet. We're getting very, very close.
Yeah, yeah, I won't leave that up. So everybody who joined, if you are not familiar with Warsaken cards or in their Discord, right? GG
Yep.
forward slash Forsaken. Uh, check them out. I have been of the opinion for a very long time that Warsaken and uh, only a couple other P2E games on Wax are here for the long term, built and designed that way from the get go, and that's
Yeah.
that's what I
Appreciate it.
look for. That's who I root for.
We've
So
we've
yeah,
got, we started as a physical game, so there's lots of opportunity for us to continue on no matter what happens. We also have our entire strategy around subscription model, which will allow people
yeah,
to still play and have access to the cards and do some fun stuff, even though they don't have all of the NFTs. And so we've got like these totally different models of business that I think will help keep each other afloat and
hell
sustain us
yeah.
for a really long time.
I think there was just one question that I didn't get to, and it was for the noob, right? And the person who's going to learn web development because they have a DApp or a Wax game idea, they want to start building it, but they don't know how to do anything, and they're going to learn it all. When it comes to UX design, what are the major pitfalls that you would warn of?
I think jumping into the design before you actually know what you want to build.
Okay,
That's the number one thing. And I reiterated that I think a lot today, but just to put a final nail in the coffin on that one, spend more time thinking about the flow of how users are going to go through your app and why they even need that page and
okay,
what is the job that page or that screen is doing, and
yeah,
figure that out long before you start designing anything.
nice. Yeah, like I definitely didn't do that on. I guess I didn't do it originally, and so since this is like like a redo of an existing site, what advice would you have there? Like if you're
Same.
same thing, like
Yeah, I
why
mean,
did they do this to begin with?
think about it this way: you can evaluate the site independently of what you've currently built. Then you can
Right.
look at what you've currently built and see where there's overlap or where things diverge from your actual goals. And then start at reconciling those.
Yeah. Cool. Cool.
There's it's never too late to take a step back and look at what you're doing, for sure.
I 100% agree there. You know what? Let me just check here. I think we might have just hit a milestone on Twitch. Let me verify it though. we were getting close, and I just watched all those follows go by, and yeah,
What's the milestone? Oh, 5,001 followers. Wow,
yeah,
impressive.
yeah. So who's hold on? Where's the second? Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
Congrats.
It's happened on this stream. This is baller, and so now I just need to find out who was the second to last.
Person
I'll
that
just take the
joined.
last 2 followers. I know I saw him in here.
I hope there's somebody from the Legion.
Yeah, so here's one, Yumden and Tell 89. Yeah, those are the last 2, and then because we had a bunch right after, um, that we got that raid, so that's awesome, dude. Wait till I tell Sandy.
that's that's awesome. Congrats again.
Alright, thank you, sir. Thank you. Let me get this timer up here. You got 30 seconds, last call for Grubfish. We got all kinds of booster packs. So I was digging into our smart contract that does the ticket redeem,
Mhm.
and because I made a special ticket for the 50th episode um that we just did on Monday of the Week in Wax, and it wasn't pulling out uh, prizes, and I couldn't figure out why. And then finally got Haiti, our backend dev, to walk me
Take a
through
look at it.
the troubleshooting of it. He's just absolutely brilliant, and it turns out that the way it was designed originally was to have different buckets. So if you made a new ticket, you'd have to make a new pool of assets for that. And I'm
Right.
like, man, I wish I would have known this. Like this, that was such an opportunity to do all kinds of other cool things with it.
You live and learn, right? Like, and that's the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
kind of thing with design. You'll find that there's going to be plenty of stuff that you identify you can do, better the next time. In fact,
yeah.
I think Dan on our team, we talk about componentizing all the time, like what's the right moment in time to start componentizing pieces of code. Um, and Dan, who's on our team, one of his mantras has been, "Look, just build it however you got to get it built the first time. We'll figure out what to componentize after you've got it up and it's
Right,
running, because it's a lot easier to see what needs to be componentized after it's been built,
right,
rather
right.
than spending all this time trying to componentize something that you're not even sure that you need some of the features that you're building into the component." So
Yeah, that kind of the way you explain that kind of reminds me of, I guess, what I know of the Agile methodology, or
yep, yep.
yeah, is that something that's pretty commonplace in the
I mean,
UX dev
Agile's
world?
the Agile approach in general is the de facto standard for software development in the US.
The standard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're not familiar with that strategy, or that the way that code is developed that way, it's kind of the main strategy now.
Yeah.
I would check it out if you're not familiar, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right, audience, do you guys have any questions for Brandon before we let him go? And dude, thank you so much again for doing this. Like it
Yeah, it's
was,
great.
I don't
Like I
know that
said,
I've
I
ever
could talk UX
rewatched
all day.
one of our streams. I know that's terrible, but I'm going to rewatch this one. I do because I don't like to hear the sound of my voice, as I feel like that's a common thing for most people.
Yeah, pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
We're always
Uh,
like, is that really me? That's what I sound like.
right. Yeah. Cool. And yeah, man, I hope you're feeling better or on the mend.
I am today. I
Yeah.
feel a lot better. I was pretty worried about
This
this
guy just
this
win
stream.
both? Unbelievable.
Nice, congrats.
uh, we'll have to run one more then. We can't let that happen. And this will be a quick one though. Get your wallet addresses in there. Where's my timer? Um,
These games
so
are so
you
great,
think
man.
I'm in good shape with MUI 5, or at least future proof for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think so. Like, that design language is definitely going to be not shifting dramatically for a while, and I don't expect. I don't expect that even if it did, that you would, if you followed the current iteration, that your interface would look outdated for a while.
Yeah.
I think there are some attempts to try and like figure out, how bubbly do you go? Is it going to have too many, more rounded corners or more straight corners? Is it?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
It's a lot of little questions. Most of that stuff though is pretty easy to fix, and honestly, depending on your CSS framework, might be really easy to change out all the time.
Right. Yeah.
If possible, theming, allowing your entire app to be swapped out for a different theme is, can be
Say
pretty
that again. I'm
powerful.
sorry.
So if you have, if you build your CSS right, you can have a lot of core properties kind of as a theme file, and you can just swap it
Right,
out,
right, right.
and you can end up with dramatically different, overall UX visuals,
Yeah.
UI visuals, that will make the whole experience change. If like you go from a dark interface to a light interface or something like that.
Yeah. I didn't show them, but there's a color presets that you can set, and so like I picked the Philadelphia Eagles colors, and Sandy has got a like UT orange and some other color, and then there's two brand ones. I like the idea of there being customizable colors and different, I guess like feels or modes, but it doesn't really change too much. It's like that purple button would have been like whatever color was the primary
Yep.
of that preset. I'm sure you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. We got Vemp and Buzz King. Who's it good? Sorry about that, Vemp. So awesome, man. I got to find somebody to transfer you guys to, or raid you guys over to. Right? I did. Well, I super appreciate it. We're
No
gonna have to
worries,
keep
man.
doing these. We started with like I guess like the dev tools, code and dev tools. Like the idea is to through group and community learning, like just encourage uh more growth and more devs and more opportunities and more
Yeah.
cool services and products on Wax and all blockchains for that matter. Because when I started, man, the like it took me maybe a year and a half to even realize that, or have somebody tell me. I didn't realize it. Somebody tell me that EOS and Wax are the same language, and stop
Yeah.
looking for Wax dev
Go
resources
look at
because
EOS
they're
stuff. Yeah.
terrible. Yeah, go look at this.
100%.
Yeah,
Documentation's really, really good on
it
EOS.
is. Yeah, it's phenomenal, and it's just like those are the little things that you know you're going to go forever trying to figure out on your own when you could have just asked somebody. And
Yeah.
all
100%.
right, Dub Wizard, shout out. All right, dude. Thank you so much. I will see you on Wednesday, or hopefully see you on Wednesday or soon. Let us know about the beta. We'll be
Yeah.
super excited to.
Once we
Uh,
get once we get beta, we'll come and do another epic
yeah,
battle.
yeah.
Give
I
you
got a
and
tune.
Sandy an opportunity to redeem yourselves.
Yeah, I'll go for 5-0 before I'll let it. You know how like you like your kids win every once in a
Right.
while. All right, awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
You have a
Appreciate
good
it.
one.
Talk to you later.